Hey everyone, welcome to today's edition of One Single Story, where each weekday we offer a brief lesson from a section of today's reading in the One Year Bible. My name is Stephen Mizell, and Jay Rivenbark and I are joined today by Wendy Korbusieski, and we're looking at the book of Genesis, chapters 39 through 41 and 16. And we're talking about Joseph and his temptation and how it reveals his character, and how sometimes life is unfair, and the response that we may have to it, and how humility should impact our leadership. So I hope you'll get a Bible and a pen and a paper, and let's have a conversation around the Word of God today. Hey everyone, we're in the Old Testament portion of our reading today. We're going to actually this week stay in the Old Testament portion and follow the life of Joseph and his trajectory, at least at this point in his life. And so he's arrived in Egypt as a slave, but the writer continues this refrain over and over again. The Lord was with Joseph. And in our reading today, he rises in Potiphar's house. He resists temptation. He's falsely accused. He lands in prison, but God gives him favor, like we see over and over again. And so Joseph goes from a slave to prisoner to the brink of promotion, all because he doesn't let those things define his faith. So was there a piece of this that you go, I want to make sure we talk about this today?
Sometimes you can do everything right and still on the outside looks like you're getting the short end of the stick. Just because you're doing the right things does not mean life circumstances are always going to go in your favor. Sometimes it's just life. Sometimes lifes. And things happen. You just got to wait and see how the plan unfolds.
Yeah, I would agree. That's kind of, for me, the focal point in here. But it also points out, as it did with Joseph, when you continue to do the right thing, even when things are bad and wrong, God still blesses you and gives you favor and influence. Even as in his situation, when he was subservient on so many levels and so many times, and yet God continued to raise him up and gave him a big sphere of influence.
You know, I have toyed around with Joseph and my view of him over the years. Some view him as this poor, soul who everything doesn't go his direction. I have, in the last number of years, taken the position that he had favor that other people didn't have, and it was always going to turn out on his side. It's even I think you can see this. Obviously, who his father is Israel, but you see this through out history with the nation of Israel, because they were God's chosen people. In the end, it always turned out in their favor. Always turned out in their favor, and in the end, every story, no matter how bad it starts, it turns out in his favor. And so what does Joseph's response to temptation reveal about his character?
His character stays rooted throughout his story in integrity and loyalty. I think those are two kind of some key characteristics about his about who he is. You can see his loyalty to Potiphar. You can see his loyalty to his faith and some of the actions that he's not willing to take. And he points it out, but it's because of his faith. Even while he's in prison, he's loyal to the work that he does. While he's in prison, he's loyal to the warden there of the prison and faithful to that work. And he does it with incredible integrity. And he gives he takes no credit for the things that he does that seem miraculous or are miraculous. He has a lot of integrity there. So I think those are two key characteristics that we can see out of Joseph.
Yeah, out of his life, it becomes so apparent that it's about character and not circumstances. And so many times we respond to circumstances which steer our character. True character is consistency, is integrity in face of or in spite of circumstances that aren't good, aren't happy, aren't going our way.
I'm sure somewhere in the 1,000+ podcasts we've recorded, I've talked about this story somewhere. But my concern about Joseph in this situation is why he was close enough she could take his coat. And I know, like, there are lots of ways to explain it out, you know.
She's wily, man. I mean, I think she just caught him off guard.
She's aggressive.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's any question about that. And I think he's still trying to carry out his duties. But I also know when I read other passages that the instructions of our faith are to flee, not to get close enough to leave a coat. And that's my tension, because it's not an answerable question.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, to your question, I mean, I see him obviously as a servant, a slave there in the house. He's got responsibilities he's doing. I like to at least think there have been previous occasions when he did his best to avoid and go around.
Yeah, I would say probably so.
And then on this occasion, for whatever reason, she just came directly. Be like somebody walking up to you on Sunday morning and being inappropriate and snatch your jacket off. And you're like, what just happened?
When I go home, if I tell my wife I left my coat at somebody's house, but we didn't sleep together.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, it's hard to explain. I mean, you got to have utmost trust before you say, yeah, I left my clothes, but you know, and I'm not making an accusation. I'm just saying that from a wisdom standpoint, the reality is we shouldn't be close enough we could lose something.
Right.
Because all you need is the accusation. Yeah. And that's what we see in this story, for it to be devastating.
And those are the conversations I've had with anybody who's interested in a ministry or a leadership position, is that you have to operate above reproach. It's not avoiding evil or avoiding sin. It's avoiding the appearance of evil. I mean, it's a whole nother level.
Yeah, because once the accusation's made, you can't.
Right.
It's hard to disprove certain things.
Right.
So how does this story encourage us when life feels unfair or misunderstood at times?
Just because the circumstances aren't going your way or they don't feel favorable, it doesn't mean that God's favor isn't still with you, that he's not working behind the scenes. I immediately am drawn to Romans 8:28. You know, that one gets played on repeat a lot. You know, God's working all things for good for those who are loving and called according to his purpose. I mean, that just feels like it naturally fits here. And I couldn't help but think of, you know, a worldly example of my kids when they were little, or at least Evan did. He read this book series when he was in school for those blessed AR points. Did your kids have to read books for AR points? Oh, gosh. That made reading a competition instead of him just reading for anyway. That's a whole nother set. Anyway, but he got into these books, the series of unfortunate events. And it was just like one bad thing happened to this orphaned brother and sister. One bad thing after another, it was a series of unfortunate events. But it was like it was just teeing them up for the next thing that eventually at the end of the series, even though it still ended almost melancholy, it was always designed because it was design. It was always putting them in another place for something else.
Something bad to happen to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. The real unfortunate event was that you read it.
To happen, you know. So just because something is not going the way you envisioned or wanted it to, doesn't mean that God's not working things out.
Yeah.
He's got there's a bigger picture, a bigger plan.
Yeah. His story is encouraging. You alluded to it a moment ago. that whatever gifts, callings, abilities, talents that God has placed on your life is still there.
Mm-hmm.
Even if the circumstances are such that you don't like them, choose them, or want them. And it's encouraging to realize that sometimes what we're experiencing that we'd rather not experience is in fact God's plan and purpose. And that there's a bigger cause and a bigger story that we just haven't been privileged to see the next chapter or the end yet. But it's there.
I don't think I've ever thought about it this way. Do you think that was God's plan? And I mean for him to go to prison and come back that way, because there would have been a pathway to Pharaoh through Potiphar, it seems. Or do you think it was a detour of somebody else's disobedience, just how the enemy at that particular point wins?
I believe he knew that famine was coming and he had to get Israel to Egypt in order to save the nation. How that happened through, slavery, through his brother's betrayal, I'm not sure that was his perfect will, his perfect
so
plan.
I get that. I guess I'm specifically talking about Potiphar's wife, Potiphar.
Yeah.
I don't know what her name was. Is there somebody in the Bible named Potiphar?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. That was
New Testament, right?
No, Joseph's wife's father or mother, family.
Okay.
Yeah. Joseph's wife's family is Potiphar.
But I'm specifically speaking, but I guess any of the events could be that case. Specifically speaking about Potiphar's wife and the accusation she made, because there was a pathway once he's in Potiphar's house to Pharaoh, to where he ends up. It appears there would be.
Through kind of a promotion.
Correct.
Or
through
whatnot.
Potiphar's recommendation. Hey, he's the smartest guy around.
Yep.
Talk to him.
Yeah. Keep pushing
I don't know.
up the
I'm just
ladder.
curious.
Well, I don't know that we have a definitive answer. I personally believe that it was all part of God's orchestrated plan. And it appears to me that even the false accusation, the going back to prison, the being forgotten in prison, were still tests of who Joseph really was, and that he still had to get some things worked out in order for God to finally get him to that. You're talking about a high calling when he's second in command only to Pharaoh. I'm trying to remember the name of the book I read not long ago that addressed this very issue. That and the point the guy was making was all these things were necessary because it seemed like he'd gone through enough tests and passed that he was ready for that responsibility, but apparently he was not yet because God still had to allow those things to come to him.
Had some lessons to learn, some more refinement he had to do internally for his character.
Now, that much I would agree with. I can't speak to Joseph. I can speak for myself. That there are some things that I only would have been able to know if I went through them, some refinement that was required.
Yeah.
So what does Joseph's reliance on God teach us about leadership and humility?
He worked and operated in such a way that God's favor was evident. It was like it was marked all over him. That Potiphar could see it, the warden could see it, Pharaoh could see it without him having to flash and say, "Hey, guess what? God's favor is on me." It was just the way he spoke, the way he operated. It was evident, and I would hope that I could live my life in that way. That's the way I would want to work and operate in my family, and to live and to lead in my everyday life. That I operate in that kind of way.
Yeah, we don't see any instances where Joseph said, "Hey, about me, this is about me. I got this. I can do this. I can do that."
Humility.
He was. It seemed like he was fully clothed in humility, and that just at the right place, right time, God chose to elevate him again, whether it's the first time he was sold, whether it was to Potiphar, whether it's to Pharaoh to interpret the dream, and the list goes on and on. It appears that he stayed humble, walked faithfully with God, and God presented him with the opportunities. He had the skill set that God had given him, but I don't see where he was ever self-promoting.
I'm going to take issue with that.
All right.
And I'm curious because I think the whole conversation here has caused me to just kind of process things. One, I do think he struggled with self-promotion when he was a kid.
To start with.
That's correct.
Yes.
Until he got
look at my coat.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the favorite.
I'm talking as a grown man.
That's correct.
Once he got sold.
Which is probably why he had to go through the things he
Yeah. So the question that I have, as I was just processing all of our conversations. So he clearly has this, I don't know whether it's youthful pride, because I don't know what it's like to be the anointed baby child. I was not. I have a sibling that is, but I don't know what that's like. But I don't know how I would have handled it.
Right.
You know, if I clearly had been given a coat that signified I was the chosen one. And I wonder if his situation with Potiphar's wife was a pride issue. I can handle this. I can resist, and I can go about my job and get as close as I want. And he got close enough, took his coat, and it cost him. And maybe that's a lesson he had to learn. I don't know. I'm just processing the whole thing, because by the time he gets to prison.
Do you think it was ironic that was his coat?
Coat to coat.
That she took?
It could be, yeah. You know,
or very symbolic.
Yeah, the very thing that he was most proud of.
Proudful.
Yeah, of course that particular one I think is gone.
Right, it was a different coat, but still, it was it was the coat.
Mm-hmm.
It was the coat.
But when he gets to the prison, he does the right thing, but he doesn't seem to say, "Hey, y'all forgot me." You know, he doesn't seem to be upset. He seems to go about his duties, and I think that is I think humility is something we have to. I don't know if anybody's born with humility. I think some people manage it better, and some people are less sure of themselves, and it comes across as humility. But I don't think anybody's born with humility. Well, I think it's something we have to work on, though.
Yeah, I think some people, as you said, manage it better than others. For some, it's an easier task than others.
Right. I mean, think about it in this terms, because we all work together. Imagine me coming in and having a coat and giving it to a staff member saying, "This is my favorite." How, that's going to change. It's going to change that person, number one, right? You know, and it's going to change how everybody feels about that person. You know, all of those dynamics. And I don't know how, I just don't know. I don't know. It'd be difficult to deal with. Right. But in general, I think real leadership is never about self-promotion. I think it's about humility. And as leaders, you got to learn that. Thank you for joining us again today on One Single Story. Just remember, integrity may cost you in the moment, but it positions you for what God is building in the long run. And I hope you'll join us again on the next edition of One Single Story.